because I need to get a view from Jagannathan Thuguntalam, head of research, fundamental research at Carvey, to understand as to, this is also one of the key reforms that the government, the markets have been looking very closely. And of course, from the industry perspective, Mr. Jagannathan, where do you see and what is your expectations, and do you really think that it comes as a pleasant surprise?
Absolutely, it's excellent work done by the CEA, and it's a music to the ears from the for the capital markets point of view. For kind of numbers that we were hearing all throughout for last 1 year or so, 15 to 15.5% is quite convincing number. On top of that, even the standard rate of 17 to 18%, I'm sure industry will take it with both the hands. And above that, we have to understand that this 17 to 18% being standard rate, that is the rate at which most of the things will be taxed. So in that sense, I think at least the confusion will be less, and only one thing that will be affected will be services, because services which are being taxed at service tax now at 14.5%, obviously will be going forward will be taxed at standard rate, that is at between 17 to 18%. Means service tax, the services related, there will be increase in the uptick in the tax rate. So barring that service tax pressure, service tax burden, I feel overall extremely well done work. I think industry and the capital markets will take with both hands.
But sir, if you look at it, coming Monday, perhaps, the CA recommendation, which would also give a hint in terms of that probably when you're looking at opposition, few of their demands already being accepted by the, is recommended by the committee. And of course, the government probably looking in that line as well, would spell good news. And perhaps you would see that markets may be slightly happy whether or not, or hopeful rather, for the GST to come through. But do you think the global factors coming in the way of India's party?
Yeah, global concerns are here to stay. But one thing we have to understand is that definitely the consensus is building. I think it may be taking little time, definitely, but definitely we are moving towards consensus. The scrapping of 1% of state government related thing is also crucial. We have to remember that being a constitutional amendment, at least half of the 29 state assemblies also have to clear this, meaning thereby state governments also have to be taken into account. Probably the allocation between the central government and state governments have to be worked out, keeping the fact that CEA has recommended scrapping this state government related levy. So all in all, I think well done job. I think going forward we are definitely moving towards the GST. It's a matter of time, I feel.
Let me bring in Mr. Soos. Mr. Soos, you heard, experts there really hopeful, and I've been speaking to some of them before you joined in as well, really hoping that perhaps this time around this crucial reform comes forward or takes the next step forward for India. And therefore, the sense that I want to understand from you, sir, is that, and as was pointed out, that this is something that your government has also started and something that has worked in, and therefore, could there be a better consensus coming in at this time around?
You're asking me?
Yes, Mr. Soos, I'm asking you.
Ostwal, I am Ostwal here.
Okay, that's Mr. Oswal, but I don't know if we have Mr. Salman Soos still on the line, but my question really was for Mr. Salman Soos. Okay, we've lost him there. All right. So, Mr. Oswal, this wasn't really for you. But as an expert, as a tax expert, do you really expect that consensus really to look more realistic at this point in time? But I want to also understand from you, there are a whole host of factors that will come, and the states which have been very, which have been wanting a rate above 20%. Do you think that aspect, and of course the recommendation coming in that even 1% additional levy should not be considered, in that aspect, do you think that the states will not be a happy lot?
No. 1% levy not coming, in my opinion, should work well. Because what they have to do some internal arrangement rather than creating more and more cascading effect of levying 1% tax, 2% tax, then there is no limit for that. So this, if a consensus is coming of 1% levy not to be there, is a fantastic approach. One consensus has come up. And if on the rate, if the consensus is coming up, is an excellent proposition. In my opinion, lower rate will create more revenue boosting, because ultimately the parallel economy which exists, which will come within the fold of GST, will increase overall revenue of the country.
All right, Mr. Oswal, stay with us. I have multiple questions to you, but I have to bring in Mr. D. Raja, their leader from CPI. Thank you so much, Mr. Raja, for joining us. You know, these are the crucial numbers that we were looking for as to what the CEA recommends, and that at 15 and 15.5%. Is that something that you think would, as your party, be happy with in terms of coming on consensus with? Mr. Raja, do we have? I think we've lost him, and we'll try to get connected and see what his view is on that issue. But I was having the conversation with Mr. Oswal, but let me first bring in Saloni. Saloni, the next big issue is as far as, you know, a single rate for the services. Do you think that will have, you know, that will impact in terms of the way the rates go forward?
So essentially what I gathered from the speech was that, you know, the rates for goods and services are to be kept similar, the same. So if that is the case, you know, currently there have been disputes between goods and services, you know, whether a transaction gets taxed as a good or a service or both, and there has been multiple litigation and disputes on that. While it is good to have the same rate for goods and services, the fact is that in India, the services sector, which forms a large part of the economy, has suffered lower rates of tax, and it's the highest now, which is at 14.5%, along with the Swachh Bharat cess. Until you know, very recently, the rate was 12.36.
Saloni, I'm so sorry, I'll have to cut you short here. We're again joined by D. Raja, Rajya Sabha MP for CPI. Thank you so much, Mr. Raja, for joining us. Your first comments with regard to the rate that has been recommended by the CEA, 15 to 15.5%. Is that something that you and your party, of course, will be happy to bring consensus on the table?
Actually speaking, rate is not that big problem. The problem is GST. The whole purpose of GST is to create a pan-Indian market, common economic market. And it is a new terrain as far as state governments are concerned. I was part of the select committee of Rajya Sabha which scrutinized the GST bill. Some state governments did tell us we are entering into a new terrain. We are not sure of the implications, consequences. One should treat very cautiously because they think some states will be at disadvantage, particularly the manufacturing states or producing states. And we discussed this issue. In fact, left parties have given a dissent note also. There we underlined and emphasized the need for upholding the principles of fiscal federalism. States should not suffer, and states should not lose out. After all, now state governments are asking for more economic powers. This should not infringe upon the powers of the state government. There we also argued for the GST Council or resolution mechanism should not be overloaded in favor of central government. There should be fairness to maintain the balance. These are all some of the things which we have said. And the 1% tax also, we said it should not lead to cascading impact. Every state should not keep on taxing. And 18%, in fact, Congress party made that proposal. Whether it is proper to put it in the constitutional structure or what, that is being debated. So let us examine this report. I know Mr. Arvind Subramaniam was supposed to meet the press and put all these things in public domain. We will examine this and we will see when we take up the GST bill for final consideration and passing by Rajya Sabha.
All right, sir, you would be looking at the final consideration right now, as you point out that you've, as a party, you've looked at a dissent on it, sir. But if you know, I mean, the whole consensus that the government is trying to bring that the states will not be made to suffer. What kind of really commitment would you be wanting to see from the government for you to you know, reconsider in terms of that the federalism is remained intact and therefore is not going to impact, and the main concern that you raised there?
Exactly, that is the point, because there are manufacturing states. For instance, Tamil Nadu is one state, Gujarat, Punjab, and some other states. And there are consuming states. How to strike a balance, and the manufacturing states should not lose out, or it should not adversely impact their economic position.
What is it that the government needs to do that you believe that it will not be adverse for the states? What would satisfy you to believe that it will not be adverse to the states in your view, sir?
Yeah, exactly. The thing is that 1% tax, the revenue neutrality, then compensation for a particular period of time, say for instance 5 years, 100% compensation. All these things were discussed, and they are part of proposals. Then the other thing is that should be a balance between central government and state government.
All right, sir, we'll leave it at that. As far as that, of course, we'll try and come to you back again once you have built consensus within your party as to what view will you hold as far as this report is concerned, and the FANA as far as, well, let's just cut into a quick interaction, and the first comments really coming in from Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General at CEA. Let's just quickly listen in, and I'll come back to my guests and ask more questions.
Submitted its report, and the RNR recommendation of 15 to 15.5%, lower than what was earlier expected. What are your reactions on that?
That's absolutely great, because we were really looking at something of a lower rate of taxation as far as GST is concerned, which would really help make GST meaningful, and the effective rate of taxation would not be. So we are moving with this recommendation. One sees that we are moving towards a sort of a taxation policy which would be very conducive for the country, and this type of rate is exactly what one was looking forward to. Very progressive, very future thinking, and this would obviously be a win-win sort of a model that one looks at, both from the consumer point of view, we look at from the manufacturing point of view, from the producer point of view, and I would also think from the government's point of view, because this type of will actually help bring in a lot more people included into the tax net, and lot more included into the tax net, and I would believe that you know, over a period of time we should look at revenues going up. So this is I would think to be the right way to go forward as far as taxation is concerned.
Sure. Yeah. Now, sir, they have suggested 3 ways of going forward: standard, high, and low. What do you have to say about that approach? Yeah,
I mean, it is expected with that type of rate that one has looked at. One did expect it to be a one flat this thing, but yes, yeah, one flat rate. But yes, this 3 is something that we were expecting. If you are really looking at a 15, so one would look at a high, mid, and low. But more and more, if we are looking at, and that's one way of working around things. And I would say that it's a good beginning. And we wanted to start off with GST. Yes, as we move along, there would be more over a period of time. We will address issues. But I think it's the right way to start off if we are able to really crack it this time around.
So now there's sin tax. That's something that's talked about in things like tobacco. Now, who really decides what's luxury, and how will that affect the production in those?
Yeah, I also feel so, because sometimes we don't. I mean, lesser we keep it for this discretion to the discretion. Sure. Today's something which is luxury to is not luxury tomorrow. So so this is something which needs to be really seen through much more critically, because yes, and sometimes just raising the rate would it help in bringing down consumption of some of the items? And is it and where do we leave it to? Do we leave it to market forces really? Yes, there could be various more methods of curbing certain consumption of certain items, but we would one needs to be a little bit more closely, critically looking at it. Yes.
Sir, now the government has been reaching out to opposition to get the GST passed in the winter session. How hopeful are you that that will actually happen?
You know, the last few weeks one has seen good development in terms of the discussions that one has been seeing of the parliament, and we are very hopeful that one converges as far as GST is concerned between all political parties. At the end of the day, this would one would see again it will be good for everybody, and I would think that this year we would this time around in the winter session of the parliament we would be able to crack it and we will be able to move ahead with a consensus on GST, which will enable us actually to plan, and there are many more things to be done before we are able to see GST rolling if we can do that by April 2016.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, there you heard the industry voice also coming in, feeling, of course, extremely happy with the rate there, but of course, how it translates and whether this crucial parliament session we see it coming through remains a big question mark. Let me get in Nitish Sharma, who's from Nangia Co, also joining us on the phone line. Nitish, I want to understand from you in terms of the corporate India, which has been looking very closely at where this number is. How would it translate really given the recommendations that we are seeing? Of course, we'll have to see where the final number heads, but the recommendations and how do you view it in terms of corporate India? Nitish, are you there on the line?
I lost you in between.
Nitish, did you... Nitish,
Sorry,
I'd just like to ask you with regard to, I'd like to ask you with regard to, what is the view really that for the corporate India, this number would bring to the table, be it the services sector or, the manufacturing India? Will it really be able to, this number looks attractive for this entire Make in India push that the government is wanting to do? And if you look at the states as well, both in terms of the R&R rate, and let's not forget the standard rate that has also been recommended.
Right. Before I say that, let me add on to it that by suggesting the range, they have got everyone on the board. This is certainly a practical proposition. It will help the manufacturers who currently have to pay multiple taxes, which goes about 25 to 28%. The widening of the tax base that the government will stand to gain from the medium to the long term. And that's also the suggestion of the CEA. Considering the combined tax collection of the center and the state is about 70% of the GDP, I take that this is a welcome suggestion. Anything above this would not have been desirable.
But do you think that given the rate and the reservation that the states have had, for them to come on board, and with the recommendation that 1% shouldn't be, the additional tax levy shouldn't come into picture, how will that pan out? Because that will be a real bone of contention for the government as well.
If you look at this, the recommendation of a 1%, probably I take it that either they will cut the life of it from a 3 years period to a 1 year period. The CEA panel is against it, but I am of the view that they may like to cut the life of it to a 1 year period. Primarily for the reason either they'll have to make the states agree to it and the states which are running for it. So my view is that this is going to get curtailed further about the additional taxes. Sorry, I missed on your first question.
All right, Nitish, I'll come back to you on that, but I have to bring in Jagannathan and understand, Jagannathan, how concerned would you be in terms of the overall fiscal numbers? Because obviously there would be concern. Everybody knows that the GST will take time to settle, and during that period, do you think there'll be teething troubles, there'll be concerns in terms of the numbers that we'll be looking into?
If they can get the architecture of taxation right in terms of GST, even if the whole implementation gets delayed slightly, I don't think industry and the markets will be worried that much. Getting the equation right, as well as the GST rates reasonable, I think that is more crucial than the implementation date per se. So all in all, I think if everything gets settled and if the consensus will, I feel that remaining operational things, I think that will get adjusted.
All right, but Jagannathan, if just to understand from you, sir, that in terms of the GST, and you just heard you were part of the conversation when you heard one of the political parties, D. Raja, commenting on it, and of course we had Salman Soz, but he was not opening the entire cards into what really Congress would now do with two of their conditions really. At least accepted by the committee and recommended by the committee. In light of that, if at all, hypothetically, one looks at it that for political reasons, the GST does not go through, how will the markets really take that?
Markets have been betting on GST passing, and they have been eagerly waiting for it, not just Indian industry as well as the global investors, and which is very crucial. It's not just the GST per se, it sends a strong message that government means business, it is ready to take tough measures, and it is ready to take all the opposition parties together along with it. I think that is the most crucial part. If in case for whatever reason GST doesn't get passed, I think there will be disappointment, especially if the international markets are already slightly under pressure and nervousness, then it adds to the pressure. But all in all, somewhere some subconscious says that probably we are maybe in the process of getting GST passed. Maybe a little bit of back and forth and a little bit of consensus building process will be there. But I think GST should be passed at this time.
All right, let me bring in another political voice here, and Ajay Alok, General Secretary of JDU, joins us. Thank you so much, sir. Very crucial to know from you as to where do you think, what is your view as far as GST now that we are seeing a recommendation? Of course, it's a recommendation stage. It will go to the GST Council and the discussions will happen. But at the stage that we look into the 15 to 15.5% R&R, what is your party's view on it?
See, there were three contentious issues pending before the GST committee, of which all the parties are having discussions, of which JDU was also a part. Now, the CEA committee, which I believe is the Economic Advisory Committee to the Prime Minister, they have given their recommendation. So their recommendation has also come, and we'll have to look it into totality, that find what are the objections and what is the recommendation, and ultimately how we can come to a mutual consent. I do understand, and we fully agree that GST is a necessity. But certain things which have been raised by the Congress and other opposition parties have also been looked into. The ruling parties opposed that GST should be brought under the constitutional cover, of which we also feel that if we get the GST under the constitutional cover, so whenever there is a change, the whole house has to be taken into confidence, which is in a way good for the nation because Parliament has to be taken into consideration whenever there is a change in GST. So all these issues will be taken together. And this 1% rate and then 17 to 18%. Now we are seeing that there are three slabs they have recommended, the lower slab, the standard slab and the higher slab. So all their recommendations, we'll have a meeting again and we'll sit together and look into their recommendation and see what is the best possible factor where we can take up the issues.
Mr. Alok, are your conditions also similar to what we had heard as far as Congress is concerned, which is about 1% additional tax levy that needs to be scrapped? The R&R or the revenue neutral rate should be lower than 18%. And are you stressing on the fact that the rate should be part of the constitutional amendment?
No, we are not pressing on any facts, but we are for certain things which should be inclusive in nature. Like we are for that if we are going to change, the constitutional factor should be there for every necessity change, because GST is not something which a party can do away with. It's something which concerns the whole population of this country. And if certain decision in such an important bill has to be taken, it should not be done through executive order only. It should be done with the parliamentary recommendation. So let us see if we can adopt it in the constitution or some other way should come out of it.
Step in that direction. And as regards the rate which you are saying, that the rate has been now submitted. So obviously the Department of Revenue and Finance Ministry will go through the report, and the report also will be put into consultation with the state governments, because they are equal stakeholders in the whole GST implementation. So through mutual consultation between the state governments and the Government of India Finance Ministry, through the mechanism of the empowered committee of the finance ministers of the states, some decisions will be taken to take it forward. And overall, if you are asking about the impact of GST, I mean, we all know that GST on the whole, I mean, there are experts who have said that GST will contribute and add to the GDP of the country. So that is a matter of fact which is on record, and there is nothing more to add. So now we have to, now as regards parliamentary procedure, let me make it very clear that I cannot comment on that. It's for the parliament's, it's for the parliament to decide.
So
Thank you.
Tax was one of the important consensus building measures with the states. The committee has recommended the removal.
No, I cannot comment on that 1% tax, because it's a matter which is.
All right, there you heard the Finance Secretary talking about giving his first comments there as far as the recommendation of the CEA is concerned. Let me bring in Rajiv Dimbri, leader in direct tax from BMR. Mr. Dimbri, can I get your first comments in terms of, when I speak to political parties right now here, we've had the Congress, we've had the JDU, we've had, of course, the CPM also here, and, of course, all are keeping their cards close to their chest. But in terms of, one, the tax reform, your view, and how hopeful are you for the GST to come through?
Well, first and foremost, regardless of the points of the politicians, and they're keeping their cards, which is fair. That's their job. As an industry person, as a professional, I certainly welcome GST. It is a much-needed reform, and I think we are beyond that debate. With these recommendations, I think there is a pleasant and a welcoming, rates, 17 to 18% as a standard rate, is obviously going to be a huge contributor to the eventual success of GST, because one of the key challenges of GST introduction is how would public perceive it, and these rates compared to the rates that we currently have would hopefully be a pleasant surprise for the industry to implement, and for the taxpaying community, people who will bear the cost of it, to accept. So I certainly welcome this. I also welcome the recommendation that this 1% tax, which was highly sort of disputed and regressive in a GST environment, there is a recommendation that should be scrapped. I'm only concerned with this demerit rate at 40%. That sounds very high to me. But other than that concern, everything else sounds good to me.
Mr. Dimbri, just very quickly, if I were to ask you in terms of, do you think that it will impact the government's fiscal mat at the number that we are still looking at?
Well, there is a host of, committees that have looked at it, and, the key aspect is that if 15.5 is considered revenue neutral rate, if there were to be one rate, and that's 15.5, and let's accept that a lot of work has gone into it, if that figure is reliable, then it should not impact the assessment. In fact, at a lower rate, more people voluntarily will comply. One expects, as part of the GST introduction, there is already an expectation that some bit of parallel trade will fold into the normal trade, and that is likely to be more if the rates are more moderate and more acceptable. So if we all agree on the sanctity of this 15.5% being revenue neutral rate, then there shouldn't be concern about government revenue.
All right, sir, thank you so much for joining us here. I appreciate all the guests, and we have had a whole host of guests, the leading tax experts in the country. We've got the markets view, and we've also got the view from different political parties to see where it is headed as far as the crucial GST. Not to forget the view of the industry as well, coming in here and reacting really to the CEA report that has been submitted. That crucial number, or the headline number that everybody was speculating for almost a couple of weeks or months, if I may say, has really come out, and it's now 15 to 15.5%. Now the GST Council will be looking into it, and before we slip into a break, I'll just get another political voice. TKS Alangovan, Organization Secretary of DMK, joins us. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. It's very crucial as to what your view is with regard to the GST. There were reservations that your party had put forth, where the recommendation that is coming in is, of course, that 1% additional, tax should not be taken into consideration, and also the fact that 15 to 15.5%. States were not very happy. What is your view, sir?
Yeah, you see this. States should have a say in the fixation of taxes, because this GST is going to take away some of the tax provisions which is now with the states. So the states should also be heard on this, and the states' opinion should be taken up. In no way this GST should take away the right of the taxation by the states. We are very definite that this GST should not take away the income of the states, because every state has their own priority in expenditure. When the tax structure is fixed by the government of India, states should not be burdened financially.
So what is the rate that you want for the revenue neutral rate to be, sir?
We are discussing. We have not come to a final conclusion, because when the bill comes to the parliament, we will discuss all those things. We have to take into consideration other areas also, and we have also suggested certain amendments to the bill. We had asked for to delete some of the items from the purview of the GST, and it should go to the state's taxation list. So the matter is being discussed now. Only now we have got this figure of 17.5%. We will discuss this and come to a conclusion. We will come with a statement.
All right, sir, we will await that statement, because that will be very crucial as to what view would your party hold with regard to the figure and the number that is given. Of course, the GST Council will be considering it first. So perhaps your comments will also be coming in there as well. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, sir, joining us here and giving your first comments. Of course, the word of caution coming in that while they will review the result, review the rates really, but they of course have to be very clear that certain elements, which of course the Tamil Nadu government had earlier pointed out, of not having certain figures like the petrol and others to be kept out, remains out, and that of course is not something that the CEA committee had looked into, but of course recommended that all the exclusions and the exemptions should be done away with. Well, that's the comprehensive analysis that we have got, a 360-degree view for you from across different political parties, from the industry and from the tax experts on their view as to whether this crucial step forward for the GST will actually help us see the light of the day of that big reform that India is looking for. But of course, it's too early, and we'll have to wait and watch and of course track very closely the way forward at the final decision as far as that crucial magic number is concerned. We'll take a short break here.